What's going on, people? Welcome to One More Watch, please. If you are new here, you're most welcome. Please subscribe the channel to support the channel. We are trying to hit the 1,000 subscribers, so I'll really appreciate if you subscribe the channel. And if you watch my content regularly, I really appreciate your love and support. I apologize, I haven't posted a podcast video in a while because I've been busy reviewing watches for a few brands. But I'm back with another podcast, and in this video, I'm talking to Chris, aka the Dial Artist. I'm sure you've all heard about him. He does amazing dial painting as a freelancer, and he also works with different brands in collaboration. Chris is also part owner of the watch case company called Cased in Time. If you remember the recent donut case that they launched, then you'll remember what I'm talking about. But yeah, without further ado, let's dive into the conversation with Chris. So, hey, Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How was your day?
Busy day, busy day. Busy day making messes of things as usual. So there's no change. There's no change. They're always experimenting, always making a mess, and always having to start again.
Cool, cool. Uh, so let's start by talking about your background. How did you get into sort of painting watch dials? What sort of inspired you? And how did
Sure,
the dial artist came into existence?
sure. Good question. So my background was in art and design. I started my kind of design career very young, joined at school, and that kind of progressed into 3D design, 3D model making, and then I went into lecturing. So I was a lecturer in an art college for since 2002, so quite a long time. And then through that time, previous to that, with my father, he was always into watches and into mechanical things. So there was always boxes of parts of watches lying around. So I always had kind of maybe a kind of a deep rooted interest in watches at that point, but no real desire to kind of be involved in the watch world. And then kind of maybe 2000 and I don't know, going back maybe 7 8 years now, so that's quite a while. I kind of got a little bit more interested in watches, and that kind of started my journey off into buying Seikos because they were kind of the affordable alternative to kind of the luxury watches at that time. And being the creative person that I like to be, I found that they were all very much the same, and the world of modding or Seiko modding was very still much in its infancy. There was only one or two websites, so there wasn't any dials that were different or colorful, or I couldn't see anything that I wanted, basically. So I decided to paint it myself. I had no real formal training. I had no real understanding of how to kind of take a watch apart. So YouTube was a great help. Still very limited in that sense in terms of tutorials and people online. I think the watch world in terms of what we see it now never
Yeah.
existed 8 years ago. Um, and so that was a trial and error. And then after trial and error and kind of figuring it out, and forums used to be kind of the go-to. There was lots of forums, lots of Reddit forums, and kind of just enthusiast groups. You have Seiko groups, and Rolex and Omega and so forth. So there's quite a lot of information, but you had to really go digging for it. And using my skills that I gained over the years in terms of understanding of paint and applications, I kind of painted a watch. I put it up on a Reddit forum that I was part of, and it was just it was just inundated with people asking me where did they get that dial from. So I said I painted it myself, and if you want one, I can do that for you. And then that kind of very quickly spiraled into doing quite a number of kind of freelance commissions. Fast forward a couple of years from there, I kind of got into Casios, and the new Casio, so to speak, came out, and so I painted that. And with that, IFL kind of got in touch and were interested in working with me. So I kind of worked with them and built up the watch department for them and kind of trained people. And we had huge success with the Casio Oaks at that time. And then parted ways with them in 2023, July 2023, and been back to freelance ever since. So it's a very quick, in a space of 8 years, going from kind of like a off the cuff Reddit post, never thinking that this is what I'll be doing 8 years from there, and having in theory quite a secure, comfortable job, to kind of giving it all up and living a freelance lifestyle and enjoying every second of it.
Cool. I must admit that the design that I've seen so far is so bold and full of personality. So I wonder
Sure.
what the process looks like from start to finish when you paint a dial.
Sure. So, I mean, my style, if we have to think about kind of a style or a fingerprint, so to speak, is very much, as you say, bold, colorful, lots of dots, splashes of color, very urban graffiti. That's where I've kind of had a very strong influence from a very early age in terms of my artistic direction. It's been very, very much kind of influenced by the urban arts. Um, and that's kind of hopefully kind of translated over the years to seeing all those little splatters on dials and all that kind of stuff. But the process, I think, is relatively the same regardless of what kind of commission we do. Whether it is an abstract art piece or more of a fine art piece where it's maybe a picture or something like that. And that kind of the process really starts with understanding the client and the individual and what they want. What do they envisage? What do they have in their mind as to what they would like? And sometimes people have really, really kind of detailed ideas. They're like, this is exactly what I want. I want this, I want this, I want this. And it's a very straightforward process of just translating it onto a dial. There are some people who want something but don't really know what they want. So instead of just me throwing out ideas to them and then just kind of like taking anything I just throw at them, my personal interest might not be their personal interest as well. So I kind of always try and remove myself from that artistic process in a sense. I kind of go, well, this isn't about me, this is about you. So, it's about teasing information from them. Do they have a memory? Do they have family? Is there a specific moment in time that they wish to capture? Do they have key interests, whether it's sport or cars, whatever it might be? And kind of getting and teasing that information out, I'm able to then kind of put my own style into the artwork rather than style into the design. And that's kind of what you see across kind of all the things that are on Instagram and websites and so forth. It's kind of my interpretation of what somebody's interests are. And that's kind of, that's the beauty of it. I mean, after that, the process is all the same in terms of tiny little paintbrushes and lots of paint and sore eyes and long hours. But yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. How long does it normally take on an average?
Um, if we have to think about it in two steps, one step is kind of the design aspect. That can be very quick. I mean, that could be like an email, and that's as decided. Other ones have taken 4 to 5 weeks to try and work just backwards and forwards conversation and emails, to try and kind of get the idea. Once we have something like that, it can be relatively quick in terms of it could take 1 to 2 days to kind of translate onto dial to 2 to 3 weeks depending on the process. The paints we use are, I say we me the paints that I use are enamel based paints, so they take quite a while to dry between layers, and if you apply the paint too much in between layers, then you can actually remove the paint. So it's not a very fast process. It's a very slow process.
Cool. And I imagine because you're painting on a dial, there's kind of no room for mistakes, right? If for example, you made a mistake, what's the process to sort of correct that? Do you have to remove the paint and then add it again?
Um, I mean, you're 100% correct. The room for error in most cases is zero. Um, uh, there are a number of, I mean, go back 8 years ago, you could walk into an AD and ask Omega for a new dial, and you'll get one. You can ask Rolex for a new dial, and you'll probably get one. Now you can't. So the and I think that's kind of that aftermarket presence of parts is also visible on eBay and Chrono24, where there's a plethora of parts up to kind of like late 2010s, and then there's nothing, because nobody can really get parts for watches unless they're authorized dealers and someone's selling off extras they somehow got hold of. So, you're talking about a zero fail rate, and if you do make a mistake, then you really have to either figure out if you can work around that, or you just have to try and explain it to the client. Luckily, any kind of errors I've made, I've been able to kind of correct. They've been very small. But yeah, there have been quite a few heart-stopping moments where, I've gone in too quick into a dial and my brush has just skipped across the dial, but luckily that's underneath the area that I'm painting. So it's like, oh my God, it's like, that was close, and especially when you're working around, like most modern watches these days have kind of got loom cast,
Yeah.
the blocks of loom. You've got to remove those. I mean, they just absorb. They're like sponges. You touch that with the tiniest bit of paint, and you can just see the paint getting
Yeah.
sucked up that loom cast, and that's it gone. You're like, oh no. So yeah, I've seen a lot of kind of things of people painting around hour markers, and I wouldn't do that, because the paint can seep underneath and degrade the glues. So I would always remove those kind of things. But that's an experience level, I suppose. That's something I've learned over the years not to do. It's not something that I've said that I've not made those mistakes. But yeah, you live and learn, and you grow and you adapt. But yeah, so far no major mistakes. So far, touch wood, touch wood.
Yeah, I imagine it can be a really expensive mistake if that happens.
Yes, yeah, it can be. I remember when I first did my Speedmaster, the Amiga Speedmaster dial was £200, and that was expensive. Now, £400 to £600. Rolex used to be, 150, £200 for a Datejust dial. Now they're 5, 6, 7, 800,000. So yeah, you can't. It's not a mistake that it's not a risk. If you don't feel confident,
Yeah.
you just don't do it. I remember painting my first Rolex dial, and I kind of stared at it for maybe 2, 3 days, just scared, like, oh my God, I can't screw this up.
Yeah.
and then once you kind of remove that fear factor of just kind of going, it's just a dial. Just imagine it says Seiko instead of Rolex, and just go for it, and you get over it. You get over it very quickly.
Cool. So can you talk about one of the most challenging projects that you did so far?
Sure. There's probably the most challenging in terms of complexity is probably the project I'm doing with Lepe. So those are these. I've got like literally a box of parts at the minute I can kind of share. So these kind of little parts. So this is the base of the grenades that sit. So that's the base that the grenade structure sits around. If you go into and kind of look at those online too, you can see I've got a box. That's just 2 grenades. So there's lots of tiny parts, and each part has to go through, I would say, seven or eight different processes for one part just to complete that. And you can multiply that by 26, 28 parts per grenade. It's a very, very time-consuming process. And Lepe, rightly so, they have very strict, super high quality controls. When we first started working together, I think we probably went back and forth quite a bit trying to ensure that the paint is completed the way that they wished for it to be completed and finished to the level that they want. And then we had to look at lacquers to finish it off. So it'll be long lasting. So yeah, they're still probably the most complex parts projects, just because of the delicacy and the how many there are.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the most complex project I've done.
Cool. Let's talk about which one was your favorite out of all the projects that you did so far.
I I won't say I have one. I have many. I do have many. Um, I think there isn't. I think the projects I have truly enjoyed are the ones that probably have the deeper meaning to people. Um, there, I mean, if I have to think of two specific ones, there's a project I did for Matt Farah, the spoken tire guy, really lovely man. Um, and that was to paint the island of Bora Bora on his Explorer. And that had a huge, deeper connection to him because, I mean, if you've known the story, if you've seen it online, basically the story is that was the last place that him and his brother-in-law and his family went to before he passed away due to cancer. So that has a huge, deeper connection to him. So just painting that and making sure that you translate that appropriately, and make it a poignant but beautiful and enjoyable moment on a dial is really challenging. Two other things where I've done projects where it was escapes you now. But you're painting the birth of children as
Yeah.
well. Those are another fun projects. And there's a lot of people that come to me and say, can you write my child's name on a dial? And you'll probably see that I mean, apart from the new Tudor range, with all the writing on the dial, I kind of stay away from writing on the dial, just because I've always found that it doesn't age well, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Specifically names and dates, I don't feel they age well. Um, and so what I try and interpret is, we can, you can go into websites and you can actually map out the night sky at a specific time and location and date, and those constellations were the exact night sky of the day that people either got married or the children were born. So I kind of translate that onto a dial. So it's a very low key, subtle concept, but the person looking at it knows exactly what's going on. And those are the dials I like to do the most.
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea.
You know,
I might get that done on my watch for my two sons.
yeah,
I just need to buy the
definitely.
right watch first.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge. Is that people? It's always the challenge of getting the right watch first.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really interesting. Uh, so where do you see the dial artist going in the next few years? Are you gonna stick to dials, or are you gonna venture into different products?
So I've already started to venture into other things. You probably see the jumper.
Yeah, we need
So I
to
kind
talk
of
about
joined.
that case in
Yeah,
time.
yeah, definitely. No, I think it's important that what I've learned and what I suppose speaking to really key influencers in the world of watches. I've been fortunate enough to sit around many tables with some very important people, both industry experts and I suppose influencers, um, and just absorb and hear how much they themselves have to continuously adapt and grow. It's either adapt to die. I mean, I think you can look at, not to name names, but I think you can probably look at some very key watch influencers who appear to be their hands in so many different pockets, doing so many different things. And I think that is very much a sign of what um, creative people have to do to ensure that they I think it's a kind of a double-headed thing. One is obviously to keep that attraction to your brand and keep people coming back to you. But also, I think it's very much an intrinsic driver to creative people that they can't just sit still. They have to be doing something. And a lot of creative people get very bored very quickly. They do something, that was a giggle, move on to the next thing. So I think that's important, that we all have to continue to adapt. And I mean, the dial artist in that brand is still unbelievably strong. There's lots of collaborations coming up, and there's lots of things already planned going into 2025. So that's great. Very fortunate. That's the way it is. And then kind of to try and branch out and do other things and have another creative output. I've kind of become part of Cased in Time, which is great, and we've already developed and kind of boosted that business with the launch of the new donut case that came out at British Watchmakers Weekend, which was a huge success with Time and Tide. We have lots more coming up in the pipeline. So yeah, it's another creative output to kind of push what I'm seeing is the need and desire of the watch industry, just to have more fun and to be less serious. So yeah, so that's what's keeping me busy.
Yeah. For the benefits of viewers, if you don't know, Chris is a part owner in Cased in Time. They make watch cases.
Sure.
So I'll put the link in the description if anyone wants to check out. Especially, I love the donut case that you guys
Yeah,
launched at the British Watchmakers show.
thank you. Yeah, they are available. Not to plug it, but they are available through Time and Tide, so you can go onto their websites and pick one up. But they're great.
Cool. And you did mention about upcoming projects. So is there any way you can talk about some of them?
Um, I can't mention too much. There is just because I mean the NDAs are very very strong. Nobody wants to release something. But I think it would be fair to say that Spinnaker and myself are working on a new project, so we can't say when it's coming out. We can't
Mhm.
say what it is, but that's in the making. And because the first one was very successful, we're very pleased with that. We've got another great project with some brands, a French brand. I won't say their name, just so that I think people can guess if they've kind of seen my recent stories that we're working with a French watch brand, which is pretty cool. But the rest is all very unfortunate, under lock and key, that I can't even mention it out loud. Otherwise, I'll probably be shot.
Cool, cool. We're excited to see your new projects. I love some of your recent projects, especially the one you did with Accurist was really cool.
Yeah, no, that was a great project. A very small project, but a super cool project.
Yeah. For the benefits of viewers, what I'll do is I'll put Chris's website in the description, so make sure you check it out, and I'll link his Instagram if you want to see his amazing work as well.
Thank you.
But yeah, thanks for joining us today. It's been fun talking to you.
No, thank you for listening
And
to me
hope
ramble on.
yeah, hopefully we'll get you on the show again to talk about more of your projects.
No, I love that. I love that. Yeah, we later on this year, I think in June, there's a watch event. I think it's called Watch Show down in Birmingham Airport. So I'll be down there with Cased in Time. So yeah, definitely come and check us out and see what we're up to, and see all the fun stuff that's happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure about anyone else, but I'm definitely gonna see you there on the 21st of June.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
But yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, mate. It's been a pleasure.